When we speak about cancer, especially colon cancer, we often think of it as an uncontrollable monster, something that grows on its own terms and spreads in ways beyond our influence. Yet what we often overlook is that cancer, like any living thing, depends on nourishment. It is not invincible. It has weaknesses. And one of the greatest vulnerabilities of colon cancer lies in what it feeds on. If you understand this, you begin to see that your daily choices, what you put on your plate, what you allow into your bloodstream, are not small decisions. They are the difference between creating an internal environment that fuels cancer or one that starves it. At the most fundamental level, cancer cells are addicted to sugar. This is not metaphorical, it is biological fact. A century ago, the German scientist Otto Warburg won the Nobel Prize for discovering what is now called the Warburg effect. He showed that cancer cells consume glucose, the simplest form of sugar, at a far greater rate than healthy cells. Normal cells can adapt using oxygen to burn fuel efficiently, but cancer cells prefer fermentation. They thrive in sugar-rich environments, even when oxygen is plentiful. In other words, cancer has a sweet tooth. Every spoonful of processed sugar, every sugary drink, every refined carbohydrate that spikes your blood glucose gives cancer a burst of energy, like pouring gasoline on an already smoldering fire. Now, does that mean that sugar causes cancer? No, cancer is complex and driven by many factors: genetics, environment, inflammation, lifestyle. But what we can say with clarity is that once cancer appears, sugar becomes one of its primary fuels. And here is where the profound insight emerges. If you reduce the excess sugar in your life, you begin to cut off the supply line that cancer cells depend on. You weaken their advantage while strengthening the resilience of your healthy cells. Think of your body as a city. Within it, every cell has its role: muscle cells that carry you forward, immune cells that defend, neurons that allow you to think and love. Cancer cells are like criminals hiding within the city, draining its resources, exploiting weaknesses. Sugar is their black market, their underground economy. If you allow that market to thrive unchecked, the criminals multiply. But if you shut it down, if you make the city less hospitable to their operations, they lose power. They struggle to survive. This is not only about cutting out sweets. It is about understanding the deeper patterns of modern diet. Highly processed foods, white bread, white rice, sodas, packaged snacks, all of them break down quickly into glucose, flooding the bloodstream. And every time your blood sugar spikes, your insulin spikes. Insulin, in turn, acts as a growth signal. It tells cells to take up sugar and grow. For healthy cells, this is part of normal metabolism. But for cancer cells, insulin is like a green light: grow faster, divide more, expand your territory. By constantly consuming foods that spike insulin, we inadvertently cheer cancer on, handing it the resources and encouragement it craves. Yet here is the beauty of the human body: we are not helpless. The same mechanisms that cancer exploits can be turned against it. When we choose whole foods, vegetables, fruits in moderation, legumes, nuts, seeds, whole grains, the sugar enters the bloodstream more slowly. Fiber acts as a shield, slowing absorption. The body's insulin response becomes steadier, more balanced. Cancer cells no longer receive that flood of fuel, while your healthy cells thrive on a stable, nourishing environment. You are not only feeding yourself, you are strategically starving disease. There is also a deeper psychological lesson in this. Cancer teaches us something about desire. Just as cancer cells crave sugar without restraint, so too do we, at times, live enslaved to cravings. We reach for sweetness when we are stressed, when we are lonely, when we are tired. We let the instant comfort of taste override the long-term health of the body. But if we can discipline desire, if we can choose wisely even when the craving is strong, we do more than protect ourselves from disease. We reclaim sovereignty over our own lives. Cancer feeds on our biological indulgence, but also on our psychological indulgence. To resist sugar is not only a nutritional act, but a spiritual one. It is an act of freedom. You see, the battle against colon cancer is not just fought in hospitals or clinics. It is fought in kitchens, grocery stores, and dining tables. It is fought each time we decide between processed sweetness and natural nourishment. The science is clear: cut down the excess sugar, reduce the refined carbohydrates, and you weaken the enemy. Strengthen your immune system, balance your metabolism, and you give your body a chance not only to heal, but to thrive. The truth is simple yet profound: what cancer craves, you can choose to deny. And every time you make that choice, you take power away from the disease and return it to yourself. So let me leave you with this thought: if cancer feeds on sugar, then every spoonful you resist is not just a small dietary decision. It is an act of defiance, an act of survival, an act of hope. To starve cancer is to nourish life. And that choice rests in your hands, starting today. If we think of cancer as a fire, sugar is not the only thing feeding the flames. Cancer is also cunning. It doesn't just wait for nutrients to float by. It creates its own lifeline. One of the most remarkable and disturbing discoveries in cancer biology is the way tumors hijack the body's ability to grow blood vessels. You see, every cell in the body depends on oxygen and nutrients delivered through our circulatory system. Without blood, there is no life. Tumors know this. They release chemical signals that summon the growth of new blood vessels to feed them. This process is called angiogenesis. It is as if cancer sends out construction crews to build new highways leading directly into the tumor, ensuring a constant flow of resources. But here's the breakthrough. Angiogenesis is not just a biological process we are powerless to stop. It is something we can influence. And the most extraordinary part is that some of the tools are not in a laboratory or in a pharmaceutical factory. They are in our kitchens, our gardens, our grocery baskets. Nature has supplied us with foods that act as natural anti-angiogenic agents. These are foods that interfere with cancer's ability to summon those blood vessels, essentially starving tumors of their lifelines. Think of green tea. For centuries, it has been revered not only as a soothing drink but also as a tonic for longevity. Modern science shows that catechins, the bioactive compounds in green tea, can inhibit angiogenesis. Or take tomatoes rich in lycopene. Research has shown that lycopene is associated with lower risks of cancers, including those of the digestive tract, partly because it disrupts blood vessel growth into tumors. Garlic, turmeric, blueberries, kale, broccoli, these are not just ordinary foods. They are biological weapons that strengthen the body's defense system by closing down the supply chains tumors depend on. Now, let's step back and think of the significance of this. When you sit down to a meal, you are not only feeding yourself. You are either fueling disease or fortifying your resistance against it. Cancer thrives when we let angiogenesis run unchecked. But when we choose foods that calm inflammation and block those errant blood vessels, we make the environment less friendly to cancer and more favorable to healing. This perspective changes the way we look at eating. Too often, food is reduced to calories, to taste, to fleeting pleasure. But food is also information. Every bite sends a signal to your cells, instructing them either to grow recklessly or to remain balanced, either to defend or to surrender. By choosing foods with anti-angiogenic properties, you are essentially sending a message to your body. Stay vigilant. Do not allow disease to take root here. But there is another layer, a more philosophical one. Cancer is relentless in its pursuit of growth. It refuses boundaries, it invades, it consumes. And in some ways, this mirrors the darker side of human nature, the desire to expand endlessly, to accumulate without limit, to ignore natural boundaries. Angiogenesis gone wild is a picture of desire without discipline, growth without purpose. And when we learn to eat in a way that restrains angiogenesis, we are also making a deeper statement about our lives, that growth must be balanced, that not everything that craves expansion should be allowed to flourish. Just as we starve tumors of blood, we can also starve unhealthy desires. This is why diet is not only medicine for the body but wisdom for the soul. When you drink a cup of green tea instead of a soda, when you add broccoli to your plate instead of processed meat, you are not just adjusting nutrients. You are aligning yourself with a principle. You are saying that life is worth protecting, that discipline is more powerful than indulgence, that the small daily choices we make carry consequences as vast as life and death. And the science is encouraging. We know that anti-angiogenic foods can slow tumor growth. We know they can lower cancer risk. We know they empower the immune system to recognize what doesn't belong and to fight it more effectively. These are not speculative theories. They are grounded in decades of research. And yet, the greatest tragedy is that many people still see food as trivial, while searching desperately for miracle cures once disease has already taken root. Prevention is the true miracle, and it is often hidden in plain sight on our plates. So I ask you to imagine this: what if every meal you ate became an act of defense, an act of healing? What if food were no longer just about filling hunger, but about closing down cancer's highways before they are ever built? Imagine the power in that. Imagine the freedom in knowing that what you choose today could prevent suffering tomorrow. The truth is, cancer depends on building its own lifelines, but those lifelines can be cut. And every time you choose foods that starve angiogenesis, you are turning off the tap that tumors need to survive. This is not only science, it is empowerment. So here is the message I want to leave with you. If cancer builds roads to feed itself, you have the power to tear them down. With every meal, you can choose to be the architect of health or the accomplice of disease. To starve cancer is not beyond your reach. It begins with what you decide to put on your plate tonight. If sugar is the fuel that cancer craves, and blood vessels are the highways it builds for itself, then fiber is one of nature's simplest, yet most profound defenses. It does not work like a drug, and it doesn't make headlines the way new therapies do. But fiber quietly transforms the environment inside the colon, and in doing so, it creates conditions where cancer struggles to thrive. It is not glamorous, but it is powerful. And perhaps that is the first lesson, that sometimes the most ordinary gifts of nature carry within them extraordinary healing potential. When we eat fiber-rich foods, vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, seeds, whole grains, we are not merely adding bulk to our meals. We are feeding an entire ecosystem that lives within us, the microbiome. This community of trillions of bacteria is not an accidental passenger in our lives, it is an active partner in our health. And here's what is remarkable: when we consume fiber, our gut bacteria ferment it into short-chain fatty acids, compounds like butyrate. These molecules are not just byproducts, they are defenders. Butyrate, in particular, has been shown to reduce inflammation, repair the lining of the colon, and directly suppress the growth of cancer cells. Think about that: something as simple as a bean or an apple or a serving of oats can initiate a cascade of molecular events that protect you at the very core of your being. Contrast that with what happens when fiber is missing. Diets high in processed foods, stripped of their natural fibers, leave the colon vulnerable. Without fiber, the microbiome begins to weaken, harmful bacteria gain ground, inflammation takes root, and the colon's lining becomes compromised. Over time, this creates fertile soil for cancer to grow. Fiber, in this way, is not only food for bacteria, it is a shield for us. It clears out toxins, it regulates digestion, it stabilizes blood sugar, and it keeps the colon in balance. But there is another dimension to fiber's role in starving cancer. High fiber diets also reduce the time it takes for waste to move through the colon. This means that potential carcinogens, substances that can damage DNA or spark mutations, have less contact with the colon wall. In a very real sense, fiber sweeps the system clean, like a river that flushes away debris before it has a chance to accumulate. It is a daily cleansing ritual, one that most of us underestimate until we recognize its impact on disease prevention. And this ties back to something deeper, something psychological. Colon cancer is, in many ways, a disease of accumulation. It builds slowly, silently, often over years. It feeds on excess sugar, excess fat, excess stress. Fiber teaches us the opposite. It teaches us the value of release. To consume fiber is to participate in a rhythm of letting go, of not allowing waste to stagnate inside of us. And perhaps there is a metaphor here for life itself. If we do not learn to release what is toxic, whether it be resentment, anger, or fear, we allow those poisons to linger, corroding us from within. Just as fiber clears the body, forgiveness clears the soul. Both are necessary if we are to remain whole. The research supports this in striking ways. Populations that consume diets high in fiber have dramatically lower rates of colon cancer compared to populations that eat fiber-poor, Western-style diets. And when fiber is reintroduced, even after years of neglect, the body responds. The microbiome shifts, inflammation decreases, and the risk of disease begins to fall. It is never too late to start feeding the body what it was designed to receive. Think of it like this: every time you choose a salad over processed meat, every time you add lentils to your meal instead of reaching for white bread, you are not just feeding yourself. You are shaping your internal landscape. You are planting the seeds of protection. You are starving the cells that do not belong, while nourishing the ones that keep you alive. There is also a humility in this truth. We often look for solutions in the extraordinary, in complex drugs, in futuristic treatments, in cutting-edge technology. But here, in the case of fiber, the solution is ancient, humble, and within reach. It asks us not for wealth, but for wisdom. It asks us not for innovation, but for discipline. It is a reminder that sometimes the cure is not outside of us, but inside the everyday choices we make. So, what does this mean for you? It means that the next meal you eat can either burden your colon or cleanse it. It means that every piece of fruit, every serving of vegetables, every handful of nuts is more than food. It is a vote cast for life over disease. It is a decision to cooperate with your body rather than work against it. And when you string enough of those decisions together day after day, you build resilience. You create an environment where cancer cannot easily take root, because the soil is already occupied by health. And so the message is clear: fiber is not just filler. It is a force. It is a protector, a cleanser, a quiet warrior in the fight against colon cancer. And it is available to you, here and now, in the simplest of forms. Let me leave you with this: cancer grows where waste lingers, but health flourishes where release is constant. Just as fiber teaches the body to let go, so too must we learn to live in a rhythm of nourishment and release. To eat fiber is to choose life, and that choice is in your hands today. If sugar is the fuel, blood vessels are the highways, and fiber is the cleansing shield, then fasting is the reset button. It is the practice of stepping away from constant consumption, allowing the body to return to its original wisdom. For thousands of years, fasting has been a part of human life, sometimes by necessity, sometimes by choice, often for spiritual reasons. Only recently has science begun to catch up with what ancient cultures intuited, that there is healing power in giving the body a break from food. And nowhere is this more evident than in the fight against cancer. At its core, fasting works by depriving cells of the constant flood of glucose and insulin that modern eating habits supply. Most of us live in a state of perpetual feeding, snacking between meals, late-night eating, sugary drinks at every turn. This means our cells, and by extension any cancer cells hiding within us, are rarely denied fuel. But when we fast, whether for 12 hours, 16 hours, or longer, we interrupt that cycle. Blood sugar drops, insulin levels fall, healthy cells adapt, entering a state of repair known as autophagy, where they clear out damaged components and renew themselves. Cancer cells, however, struggle. They are rigid, addicted to sugar, and poor at handling stress. Fasting creates an environment where healthy cells become stronger while malignant cells become weaker. Think about the wisdom of this. Nature designed our bodies not for constant abundance, but for rhythm. Times of eating and times of not eating, times of gathering and times of waiting. Cancer thrives on the endless abundance of modern life. Fasting restores the rhythm, reminding the body of its original design. It is as if we are pressing pause on disease, giving the body a chance to recalibrate and heal. There is also a deeper philosophical lesson here. Fasting is about hunger, yes, but it is also about restraint. It forces us to confront our cravings, to sit with the discomfort of not immediately satisfying desire. In a world built on instant gratification, fasting teaches patience. It teaches that strength is not only in consumption but also in refusal. Cancer, after all, is a disease of refusal to stop growing, to stop consuming, to respect boundaries. By fasting, we embody the opposite principle: discipline, balance, and the wisdom of knowing when enough is enough. Scientific studies support this in remarkable ways. Intermittent fasting has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity, lower inflammation, and reduce growth factors like IGF-1 that fuel cancer development. In animal studies, fasting has made cancer treatments more effective, weakening tumor cells while protecting normal ones. Even in human trials, patients who fasted before chemotherapy reported fewer side effects because their healthy cells were in a state of repair while the cancer cells remained vulnerable. Imagine that something as simple as withholding food for a period of time can enhance the body's resilience against disease and even amplify the power of medicine. And yet, fasting is not just about biology. It is also about psychology and spirit. When you fast, you realize how much of your eating is not about hunger but about habit, boredom, or emotion. You begin to see the ways in which food has become a crutch, a distraction, a form of escape. In that recognition lies freedom. If you can learn to master hunger, even for a few hours, you begin to master yourself. You begin to see that you are not a prisoner of your cravings. And that inner freedom, that sense of sovereignty, is just as vital to healing as any nutrient. This connects beautifully with everything we've already explored. Sugar, angiogenesis, fiber. These are all ways of managing what enters the body and how it is processed. Fasting goes a step further. It teaches us the power of not feeding at all. It reminds us that sometimes the best way to nourish health is to withhold nourishment for a season, to give the body space to repair. Just as fields need fallow time to regenerate, so too does the body need moments of emptiness to restore its strength.